I've been driving for the same car service for 3 years, and in all that time, I've learned one thing. People forget you're there. That's not a complaint. It's just the truth. When you're the man behind the wheel, gray at the temples, quiet, doing your job, you become part of the car, like the seat leather or the rearview mirror. People look right through you. They make phone calls they'd never make in front of a real person. They say things out loud they'd never say if they thought someone was actually listening. I know, because I listened. My name is Charles. I'm 63 years old, retired from the U.S. Postal Service. After 31 years of routes, of weather, of learning every street in our corner of Columbus, Ohio, like the lines on the back of my hand. When my wife passed 4 years ago, the house got so quiet I thought it might swallow me whole. My daughter kept telling me to find something to do. Join a club. Volunteer. Travel. I tried the travel thing once. Took a bus trip to Branson, Missouri with a group from the senior center. Came back more tired than when I left. What actually helped was driving. A buddy from the old neighborhood was working for a car service. Not Uber, a proper company that handled corporate accounts, hotels, airport runs. He said they needed reliable guys who knew the city. I signed up mostly to have somewhere to be in the mornings. To have a reason to put on a clean shirt. I didn't expect it to change anything. I definitely didn't expect it to save my daughter. Her name is Alicia. She's 34. Works in pharmaceutical compliance. I couldn't explain exactly what that means, even after she's described it to me 4 times. But I know it requires a sharp mind and long hours, and she's always been good at both. She got that from her mother. The patience, too. Maybe too much patience, as it turned out. She'd been seeing a man named Duncan for about 2 years when he proposed. I met him maybe 6 or 7 times total. Thanksgiving, a birthday dinner, once at a cookout at her apartment complex in Westerville. He was the kind of man who filled a room without particularly doing anything memorable in it. Tall, good-looking in a magazine way, the type who always seemed to be performing slightly. He worked in commercial real estate development, which meant he talked a lot about deals and projections and opportunity windows. And he had a handshake that was about 10% too firm, like he'd read about handshakes in a book once. I didn't dislike him. I want to be honest about that. I didn't have a strong feeling either way, and I told myself that was fine. That Alicia was a grown woman who knew her own mind. My daughter called me the night he proposed. She was crying. The good kind of crying, she kept saying. Happy tears, Dad. He took her to that Italian place on High Street, the one with the candles on every table, and he got down on one knee right there in the restaurant. She said people clapped. She said the ring was beautiful. I told her I was happy for her. I meant it, mostly. The strange part started about 6 weeks later, and I almost didn't recognize it for what it was. I was running a morning corporate run, which is my usual shift, 7 to 9 a.m., picking up business clients from hotels or their homes and taking them downtown or out to the airport. The dispatch came in. Pick up at the Marriott on Easton. Drop off at a building on Polaris Parkway. I pulled up, popped the trunk, and the man who came through the hotel's sliding doors was Duncan. I saw him in the rearview mirror before he saw me at all. He was on his phone already, a coffee cup in one hand, a laptop bag over his shoulder. He got in the back seat, said the address out loud to confirm it, and went right back to his call. He did not look at me once. Not at my face, not at my name on the booking screen, nothing. I'd met this man at my daughter's Thanksgiving table. I'd passed him the sweet potatoes. He had no idea who I was. I'll be honest, my first instinct was almost to laugh. I thought about saying something, clearing my throat and watching his face change. But something stopped me. I don't know exactly what. Call it instinct. Call it the particular stillness you develop after 3 decades of sorting mail in the dark at 5 in the morning. I just went quiet inside, and I drove, and I listened. That morning he was on a work call the whole ride. Something about square footage and lease terms. Nothing that meant anything to me. I dropped him off, went back to my route, and didn't think much more about it. Then he booked again 2 days later, and then again the following week. Duncan, it turned out, had a regular meeting every Monday and Wednesday in Polaris, and he always stayed at that Marriott the night before, rather than driving up from Columbus in morning traffic. I became his regular driver without either of us knowing it, or rather, without him knowing it. I knew exactly what was happening. Every time the dispatch came in and I saw that pickup address, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not dread exactly, something quieter. Attention, he never recognized me. Not once across the first month. I kept my hat on, kept my eyes forward, answered in the minimal way drivers answer. Yes, sir, 15 minutes. Have a good one. I was furniture. I was the car. And because I was furniture, he talked. The first thing I noticed was small. He was always on the phone, always in the middle of something. And he talked about Alicia the way some men talk about a renovation project. Like she was a space he was in the middle of redesigning. She'll come around on it, he said once, to someone on the other end. She just needs time to get used to the idea. I didn't know what idea. I told myself it was nothing. Couples disagree about things. That's normal. But then came the Wednesday morning in early October. He got in the car quieter than usual. Waited until we were on the highway before he made his call. And then he said, yeah, we're locked in on the Phoenix move. March, maybe April at the latest. I kept my eyes on the road. My hands didn't move. But something went very still in me. Phoenix. Alicia lived in Westerville. Her job was in Columbus. Her mother is buried in a cemetery 12 minutes from her apartment. She goes every Sunday, brings fresh flowers when they're in season. She has a best friend she's known since the 7th grade who lives 4 streets away. She has a life, rooted in a particular patch of Ohio. And nobody had said a single word to me about Phoenix, I told myself. Maybe she knows. Maybe this is something they'd already discussed, and it was news to me, only because I'm not always in the loop. I drove and I breathed, and I kept my face exactly the same. But then he said, she doesn't know the timeline yet. I'll tell her after the engagement party. Once the ring's been on long enough, these things are easier to manage. Easier to manage. I thought about my daughter on the phone. Happy tears, Dad. I did not say anything. I pulled onto Polaris Parkway and dropped him off and watched him walk through those glass doors without looking back. And I sat in that parking lot for 4 minutes before I could make myself pull away. That was the day I understood what I was dealing with. Over the next 6 weeks, I learned a great deal more. And I want to say clearly that I wasn't trying to spy. I was doing my job. He kept booking the car. I kept showing up. And he kept talking because I was furniture, because he never once looked at the man driving him to his meetings and thought, this person matters. I learned that the Phoenix move was connected to a development project he was a partner in, a mixed-use commercial property that he expected to make him, in his words, genuinely wealthy for the first time in my life. I learned that he planned for Alicia to leave her job once they relocated. She can find something out there, he told someone. Or not. Honestly, once we're settled, it's easier if she's flexible. I learned that there was a property in Scottsdale, not Phoenix proper, Scottsdale, that he had already toured twice and was considering making an offer on. A 4-bedroom. Because, as he said to whoever was on the other end of that call, we're going to start a family right away. I want that structure in place. My daughter, who has talked since she was 27 about whether she even wanted children, and who has always been honest with me about that uncertainty, I thought about recording it. I want to address that directly because I know it's the first thing anyone would think of. I actually looked it up one night. Ohio recording laws. Ohio is a one-party consent state, which meant it would have been legal for me to record conversations I was part of, or in proximity to. I had my phone. I could have done it. But I kept coming back to one thing. I'd had this same conversation with my wife years ago about a situation that wasn't dissimilar. Someone we loved was with someone we had doubts about. And she said something I've never forgotten. She said, Charles, people don't believe what you tell them about someone they love. They have to see it for themselves. The moment they feel pushed, they protect the person who pushed them. She was right then. And she was right now. If I showed Alicia a recording of her fiancé making plans without her, she might believe the facts and still find a way to make them his facts. She might decide I'd misunderstood the context. She might do what people in love sometimes do. which is build a wall between themselves and the uncomfortable truth. And behind that wall, she'd be in Phoenix in 6 months, with a man who thought of her life as something to be managed. I needed something she couldn't rationalize away. I needed him to say it himself, in front of people who mattered, with nowhere to hide. The engagement party was scheduled for the second Saturday of November. It was being held at a banquet room in a restaurant in Dublin, Ohio. Nice place, white tablecloths, the kind of event that costs more than it looks like it should. Alicia's aunt and uncle were coming from Cincinnati. Her college roommate flew in from Charlotte. There were about 40 people in that room, and every one of them was there because they loved my daughter. I wore the gray blazer her mother always said made me look distinguished. I got there early. Duncan arrived with Alicia, the two of them glowing in that way engaged couples glow when they're the center of something. Arm in arm, laughing, greeting people. He shook my hand, said, "Good to see you, Charles." His grip was firm, the practiced kind. He had absolutely no idea. I waited. I've always been good at waiting. 31 years of being at my root. Before sunrise will do that for a person. I made small talk with Alicia's aunt. I had a glass of the sparkling cider they were pouring. I watched Duncan work the room the way I'd been watching him for 2 months. With that slight performance, that sense that he was managing the impression he made on everyone in it. It was during the toast that I made my move. Alicia's aunt went first. Sweet, heartfelt, something about love finding you when you stop looking for it. Then her college roommate, who made everyone laugh. Then Duncan's friend from work said a few words about what a great guy he was, which I filed away. Then I stood up. I looked at my daughter first. She was smiling at me with that particular smile she has. The one that still looks a little like she did at 7 years old, gap-toothed and hopeful. I love that smile more than almost anything in the world. I said, "I want to say something a little different if you'll bear with me." People leaned in. There's something about a father at an engagement party. People expect emotion, and I was going to give them something, just not what they expected. I said, "Duncan, I understand you've had a busy few months. A lot of projects in the works, a lot of exciting things on the horizon." I kept my voice warm, conversational. I was hoping you could tell us a little about some of those plans. Specifically, I'd love to hear you tell Alicia, in front of all these people who love her, about the move to Phoenix. Or Scottsdale, actually, and the timeline you have in mind. The room went quiet in that particular way. Rooms go quiet when something unexpected happens, and nobody's sure yet whether it's wonderful or terrible. Duncan's smile stayed on his face about 2 seconds longer than it should have. That's the thing about a practiced smile. It has momentum. It doesn't stop immediately. But then it did stop. He said, "Charles," and there was a warning in it, quiet and thin. I said, "I'm asking because I want to make sure Alicia knows. That's all. When were you planning to tell her about the Scottsdale property? The 4-bedroom? The timeline for her to leave her job?" Alicia had turned to look at him. The room was perfectly, completely silent. "We've talked about some of this," he said. I looked at my daughter, not in accusation. "In love," I said. "Honey, has he talked to you about relocating to Arizona? About a property he's already looked at twice? About leaving your job after the wedding?" She looked at me. Then she looked at him, and Duncan, who had spent 2 months making phone calls in the back of a car because he thought the driver was furniture. Duncan had nothing left to say. What happened next wasn't dramatic in the way movies are dramatic. Alicia didn't throw her glass or shout or cry. She was quiet, the way she gets when she's working something out. She asked him, in a voice that was very calm and very level, "Is that true? Did you already pick a house?" He started to explain. The development opportunity. The timing. How he was going to tell her, just after the party, when things settled down. How he thought she'd be excited once she understood the full picture. She listened to all of it. Her face didn't change much, and when he finished, she reached down to where her left hand was resting on the table and she slid the ring off her finger, and she set it on the white tablecloth in front of him. She didn't say anything, she didn't need to. Her college roommate put an arm around her. Her aunt made her way across the room. I stayed where I was, because she needed her people around her, not just her father. And I knew that. And I also knew that later, when it was just the two of us, there would be things to say, and time to say them. Duncan picked up the ring. He looked at me once. And here is the thing I want to tell you about that look, because it matters. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even real surprise. It was something closer to recognition, like a man who's been running a bluff, finally seeing the cards on the table. He left without making a scene. I'll give him that. Later that night, after the guests had slowly found reasons to leave, and Alicia and I were sitting in her car in the parking lot with the heat running, she asked me how I knew. I told her everything. The Marriott pickups. The 2 months of Monday and Wednesday mornings. The phone calls about Phoenix and Scottsdale, and her job in the 4-bedroom house he'd already visited twice. The reason I didn't record it, and what her mother used to say about truth and the people we love. She was quiet for a long time after that. Then she said, "He never recognized you." "Not once," I said. She shook her head slowly. "He came to Thanksgiving, Dad. You passed him the sweet potatoes." "I know." She looked out the windshield at the parking lot lights. "What does that say about him?" I thought about all those mornings, the way he settled into the back seat, like he was settling into a waiting room chair. Comfortable, unaware, already somewhere else in his mind. The way he talked about Alicia's life like it was a column of figures he was working through. The way he never once said good morning without it being required. I said, "It says that some people only see what they think is worth seeing." She leaned her head back against the headrest. After a while, she said, "I'm not okay right now." "I know," I said. "You don't have to be." We sat there for a while longer. The heat ran. The parking lot was quiet. And I thought about what I couldn't say out loud, which was, I was afraid I'd gotten it wrong. I was afraid she'd be angry at me for exposing him the way I had, in front of 40 people, without warning her first. I was afraid that even the right thing, done imperfectly, could cost me my daughter's trust. But she reached over and put her hand over mine on the center console, the way she used to when she was small, and we'd drive somewhere together, and she'd fall asleep in the passenger seat. She said, "Thank you, Dad." That was enough. That was more than enough. It's been 5 months now. Alicia is still in Westerville. She still goes to the cemetery on Sundays. She went back to work the Monday after the party, and, from what she tells me, she's been doing well. Better, actually. She went out to dinner last month with her college roommate, who extended her trip by a few days because she didn't want to leave. I think there's a guy from her building she's maybe seen a few times, though she hasn't said so directly, and I haven't asked. She calls me on Sunday afternoons, usually around 3, after she's been to see her mother. We talk about the week. She asks about my driving routes. I tell her about the city, about what's changed and what hasn't, about the way Columbus looks in different seasons from behind a windshield. I still take the corporate morning runs. I still pick up business people from hotels and drive them to their meetings, while they talk on their phones and forget I exist. Most of the time, that's perfectly fine. I've learned more about people's private plans and secret worries in 3 years of driving than I ever did in 31 years of delivering their mail. And I'll tell you what I've concluded. After all of it, the truest version of a person is the one they show to someone they don't think matters. Watch how a man treats the driver. Watch what he says when he thinks no one worth impressing is listening. My daughter is in Westerville. The ring is gone. And some mornings, when I'm on the highway before 7 and the city is just beginning to wake up, I think about a quiet man behind a wheel who was invisible in exactly the right moment. I think about my wife, who was always right about these things, and I keep driving.